Okay, hey everyone. I'm not going to play anything. I'm just going to kind of talk and then I'll get out of your way. Let me just make sure you can hear me. Give me just a minute. Okay, looks like the notification just went out. That's good. Okay, so I hope you all are having a great Monday, as good as a Monday can be. I know some of you are probably off because today is the observance of the Juneteenth holiday, right? So, to those of you who had the day off, I hope you enjoyed it. Certainly, I personally think that this is just a public display. Okay, it's just going to be another holiday where niggas get together, have cookouts, and shoot each other. So, if you're celebrating today, just be careful about who you're around. I find it very telling that at this time, this whole weekend, right, which was Father's Day and then, Juneteenth or whatever, instead of focusing on that, you had Black men all over social media who took like a 10 to 20-second clip, made it go viral, and used it to promote a narrative about Black women that is simply not true. You know, we've talked about this for years now. If you've been on this channel or on my other channel, we've talked about the memetics of the Black manosphere and how they will take images, just small clips, and use those very small clips to push a narrative that simply does not exist because they use words and images to create a world to match their viewpoint, even when that viewpoint is the opposite of what is true. I told you before that all of these people talking about marital rates for Black women know nothing about statistics because they're leaving out the fact that Black women are such a small portion of the population that if you have Black women in 2 or 3 different parts of the country who have a low marital rate, it skews the data for the entire country. And that's literally what's happening. You don't have to take my word for it. Look at the Pew Research Center, the CDC, Kaiser, all of these organizations that review that type of data. They will tell you that generally speaking, Black people overall live in about 10 to 11 major large metropolitan areas. Then they will tell you that the marital rates are low for Black women in Atlanta, the DMV, and maybe 1 or 2 other places. And because of those 3 or 4 cities, it fucks up the data for the entire population of Black women in this country. Those same studies, and listen, those studies exist because they countered the information that Steve Harvey and NBC Nightly News put together years ago, right? And they were saying, well, wait, if you take that marital rate and you take out Atlanta, the DMV, and those 1 or 2 other cities, our marital rates are consistent with other groups of women. As a matter of fact, when you look at Black women who live outside of major metropolitan areas, so Black women who live in small towns or Black women who live in mid-sized metropolitan areas, our marital rate is actually higher than most other groups of women, to the tune of being married at almost 90% by the time we're 30 or 35. And then when you look at Black women in interracial marriages, we have data that shows that those of you in interracial marriages have a very low divorce rate. So that marital statistic for those Black women in those 3 or 4 cities, and then Black women overall, does not follow us with other groups of men. The out of wedlock birth rate for Black women does not follow us when we partner with other groups of men, right? But just like in this instance of this one viral video clip, they take a small segment of data. So they say, well, this is what's happening in Atlanta. So we're going to use what's happening in Atlanta to suggest that this is what's going on for all Black women. We're going to use what's happening in the DMV, which is what's called the DC Metro. So DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. We're going to use what's happening in the DC Metro and say, well, ha, 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 since it's happening there, it must be going on everywhere else. And that is simply not true. It's simply not true. But I want you all to understand that all of this confirms that these men that so many Black women continue to support do not care about the truth. They care about whatever snippet of data they can find to promote their view of Black women. And because, unfortunately, generally speaking, a lot of Black people do not look at information for ourselves. You literally have Black people who are taking people like Kevin Samuels seriously. And I understand that he's dead, but if you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit. He was not a statistician. He was not an analyst or a consultant for the Pew Research Center, the FBI, the CDC, Kaiser Permanente. He was not an expert. Okay? He was a sissified nigga in a suit who was used by other Black men because they thought, correctly, I must admit, but they figured that because he was tall, if they put him in a suit, people would listen to him. And they knew that whatever that motherfucker said, people would believe it. Everybody is ignoring the fact that when that girl posted that clip saying, ha ha ha, I'm here at the event trying to meet men and the men aren't here. Everyone's ignoring the fact that other people later posted their own clips at the event and they said, well, those girls got here early because after a certain point in the evening, there were men here of all races and they posted clips. They're on Twitter. And they said they had a really good time. But that doesn't fit the narrative, right? Because the narrative has to be that Black women are undesirable and unwanted. So anything that goes against that is ignored. You're undesirable, you're unwanted, and oh, ha ha ha, this particular group of men doesn't go to singles mixers. Well, maybe that's why they went, because they know certain men aren't going to have access to events like that. So maybe they were attempting to meet men like that, because in that part of Texas, apparently, interracial dating is quite popular for Black women. But people are not talking about that because, again, that doesn't promote the image that everyone wants to see. It doesn't promote the image at all. And instead of focusing on that, you still have so many Black women online acting like divestors are public enemy number one. We're your biggest enemy. We're your biggest threat. When literally the girl in that clip, her face has been blasted all over the internet. And she didn't do anything wrong. She probably posted something to her own page. How somebody found it and made it go viral is frightening. But as I've said for years, like, yo, Black women, if you have open social media accounts, these niggas are stalking your pages. If you have open Facebook and open Instagram and open Twitter, if you're on TikTok, wherever, if you do not make your page private, you might be the next one just out with your friends who post a clip of yourself. And now millions of people have attached you to an image to suggest that you're undesirable. And that's what everyone wants to believe. No one wants to see the other clips of, men bringing you drinks, maybe men buying your food, paying for your dinner, men dancing with you, men having a good time with you. No one's going to care about that. You're always going to be the Black girl who went viral because no one wanted you, because no one showed up at this event. Like, that's sickening to me. And I'm just at this place where I'm like, okay, when are Black women going to get to the point where more Black women firmly reject the manosphere, red-pilled spaces, and anyone, man or woman, who remotely supports those spaces? Because there are a lot of Black women on YouTube that I've come across, and maybe I like their content, but there are certain things that we disagree on. And they're not women who are divested. They're not women who are BWE. And those women have rejected the manosphere and the red pill and those messages. But you have Black women who claim to be for other Black women and who claim to care about Black girls, but they'll never come out and firmly say, like, no, these niggas are trash. Their message is disgusting. It's vitriolic. They'll never firmly reject it. Instead, we're the problem. We're the issue. When if there wasn't so much mud being thrown our way, maybe more Black women, like those young ladies who showed up at a singles mixer early, maybe more of them would have thought to themselves, well, you know what? Maybe I need to make my social media pages private. Maybe I don't need to post this because I don't want to go viral. Stuff like this, depending on the type of background check that's done, stuff like that can show up when you're trying to get a job. Or you currently have a job, right? For those of you who go into an office every day, how would you feel if you went viral in one of these moments with incorrect messaging, and then you show up to work Monday and all your coworkers are laughing at you? Maybe you're there at the singles mix just to go with your friends. Sometimes we have friends that are a little bit shy. So maybe a group of 3 or 4 of us will go out to support them. So maybe you're just there to support your friend. You got a friend or two and they just wanted to go to see what's out there. Maybe you've been seeing a guy already. Like, maybe you already have your own man. How do you think that's going to look when you go viral in this moment and your man and all his family members and all his friends and all his coworkers see you making a joke, probably? Like, why do we not get to say this and not be bothered? It's like, why do we not get to say, like, hey, be careful. These men hate you, to the point where men who, either a man who doesn't know her made that shit go viral, excuse me, or some nigga on her friends list reposted it and made it go viral. Because that's another thing. Those of you who still associate with or congregate amongst Black males need to understand that I don't care if that nigga is your cousin. I don't care if he's your brother. For some of y'all, I don't care if he's your dad. I don't care if he's the dude you grew up with. They hate you too. Because that's the other question. This girl, from what I understand, is not like a public figure or anything. So how did her clip go viral? And whoever made that clip go viral didn't go back and say, well, no, they posted later on to say that, it was men there and everybody had a good time. If you're going to have social media, your social media really just needs to be close family and close friends. I'm telling you, those of you with social media pages, if you're not a public figure or an influencer, and even if you are, your personal social media circle needs to be very small, because these niggas are watching and they're looking for moments like that. And they went and dug up Kevin Samuels' bones and said, well, ha, 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 the Godfather was right. These women really aren't wanted. Well, no, that motherfucker was wrong. Because again, apparently in that part of Texas, interracial dating is pretty common for Black women. And they're saying that men of all races showed up. So your dead maggot food Godfather is wrong. Just like he was wrong in deciding to go out with that girl that night who probably fed him some fentanyl-laced cocaine. His message was wrong as well. But again, that doesn't push the narrative. That's not going to get you the clicks. That's not going to get you the likes. That's not going to get you the donations of these men, because they need to believe that you're not wanted. But I'm just like, how many times does this shit have to happen before Black women? And I'm not saying we have to come together, because generally speaking, I don't trust anyone, including other Black women. Okay? But when are more Black women going to get to the point where we can at least say, okay, these men are so hateful and evil that they will promote and spread a lie, because that's how much they hate Black women. And because what they're saying is only supported by lies, their message and anyone who supports it must be firmly rejected. And then for myself as a divester, I'm looking very closely at these other Black women who continue to collab with those men. And I'm like, okay, if you can collab with men who like to do shit to make innocent Black women go viral and potentially ruin their lives, if you can collaborate with those men and associate amongst them, you do not have, listen, you're not fucking qualified to judge divestors. Name the divested Black woman who has just randomly been on someone's social media page, took a clip of whatever and made it go viral, and then we all sat here and said, ha ha ha. Now we might talk about some shit that's already viral, but we're not doing shit like that. Instead of these men celebrating their fathers or their father figures and celebrating what is supposed to be an important day, I guess, for Black people here in the U.S., Juneteenth, instead of them celebrating that over Father's Day weekend, they took a 10-second clip, used it to suggest that Black women are unwanted, and then refused to go back and acknowledge that men did show up and those women seemed to have a good time. Anyway, hello to anyone in the chat. Let me see. Hi, Helen. Hi, beautiful Aries. I know, 4th of July, I just stay in the house. I'm telling you, Juneteenth is going to be another holiday when more niggas get shot. We all know that. And it's summer too. It's a summertime holiday. See? Hi, Unseely's violin. Yep, there was a shootout in Harlem. Hopefully you stay away and you keep your kids away. Whatever they do to themselves. I probably shouldn't say this, but whatever they do to themselves is probably a gift to the rest of humanity. Just try to stay out of the crossfire. You said most big cities have lots of crime, but every big city has nice parts where there aren't. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Hey, Aisha. Aisha. I think I pronounced it wrong the first time. Hi, Kayana. Well, no, that's not actually what happened. See, what people did, particularly Black men in the manosphere, is they took a clip. One of the girls, or I guess her and her friends, showed up to the mixer early. So she posted a clip and was like, ha ha ha, I'm at a mixer to meet men and there are no men here. Somebody took that clip and made it go viral and suggested that men never showed up. What they neglected to do was go back and post all of the other clips from other attendees saying that a little bit later in the evening, men did show up. And apparently in that part of Dallas, it's not uncommon for Black women to interracially date. So there were men of all races there. The men showed up and the women showed themselves having a good time. But that didn't go viral, right? Because that's not what Black men wanted to do. It's like, okay, you show like this little short video, you suggest that that's what happened the whole night, and that's the messaging that everyone sees. Yeah, in the clip that they made go viral, they absolutely did. You said you wonder if some Black women strippers are for interracial dating. I'm sure they would be. Other groups of men don't seem to be as judgmental of Black women being in the sex work industry, so I'm sure they would. Hi, Art of Aries. You said if Black women strippers are open to IR, chances are they will get dusty non-Black men. I guess it depends on the types of clubs they work in, though. Like if they, if they work in seedy clubs and they only interact with bottom feeders, then that's probably all they'll get. But I guess it depends. You said this is why your social media is private. Yeah. I mean, again, this is just a suggestion. This is not me telling anyone what to do. But I would say be very careful about having an open social media. Or if you do, have one that's open and one that's private. Or I know on some pages like Instagram, you can have like a close friends account where there's certain posts that only your closest friends will see. But it's just certain shit you can't post on. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that there are a different set of rules for us as Black women. But for me, I'd rather see fewer of us subjected to these moments of public humiliation unnecessarily. Especially, it would be one thing, like it wouldn't bother me so much if there weren't other posts showing that later on in the night, the men actually did show up. But it's just like, wait a minute. So people are using this one clip to say Black women are unwanted, but they're not going back and correcting the story and saying, well, no, other, like later in the evening, men did show up and they were interacting with the women. And according to some of the social media posts that I was reading, people from that area in Texas were saying that it's very common to have those type of events, like the singles mixes, and that they're not, how do I want to say this? Oh, well, they're not, they're not like specific to race. So if a Black woman hosts a singles mix, it's not assumed that only Black men are welcome. You know, they very much mingle with other races of men. But again, these red-pilled content creators don't want that message out there. They don't want that message out there. And unfortunately, like I said a little bit earlier in the conversation, a lot of times as Black people in general, we're not looking at things for ourselves, even on social media, much less in a book. But we're not looking at information for ourselves. So we see a clip, we see everyone talking about the same thing and assume that it's true. Now, I will admit it does take a bit of digging now, because that event was like a couple of days ago now. But if you scroll through all the Twitter posts, you'll see like the videos and the pictures with women and men at that event interacting with each other. You'll see the social media posts from other people from that part of Texas saying that it's not uncommon for Black women in that particular area to date out, and that those types of events in that part of Texas, and they also said other parts out west like Colorado, Nevada, you know, like Vegas and stuff like that, those type of events are not uncommon, and the men do show up. And when I say men, I'm talking about the male species. I'm not breaking it down by race, because that's not what the commenters on Twitter were saying. They were saying they show up to those events and there are all kinds of men there. No problem. Yep. Working full time. And it's not true. Because, you know, they're talking about Atlanta and DC. And like I said before, one or two other cities. When you see all these conversations about Black women and dating problems, they're literally talking about 3 or 4 metropolitan areas. Because in certain parts of the country, like West, places like Texas, places like California, right? In certain parts of the country, it is not uncommon for Black women to date out. That is why the rates of interracial marriage for Black women are increasing, because more Black women are dating out. And they're not having a problem getting married. Even parts of the Midwest, you know, like New York, in certain parts of the country, interracial dating for Black women is not uncommon. A lot of the Black women in Atlanta and the DC metro don't seem to want to date out. So it skews the data for the rest of the country. It's the truth. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. Check out the Pew Research Center, Kaiser Permanente. There are a couple of other research groups, because they put that information out there a few months after that special, that primetime news special that Steve Harvey did. And they pointed out that the statistics that are commonly used to paint Black women in a certain light, use data that would not typically be used in statistical research, in scholarly research. We're not talking about niggerisms, right? Because that's what these dudes come on here and do. They speak niggerdom, right? So, for example, with Steve Harvey, there's no reputable study on marital rates that would use girls as young as 15 in the data. But when he did that news special, the marital rates that he put out used girls from age 15 to women up to age 64. Now, first of all, it's illegal, right, for a 15-year-old girl to get married. Secondly, the average woman in the US doesn't get married until around 27, including Black women who interracially marry. Black women who interracially partner have marital rates pretty similar and in line with other groups of women. Even Black women outside of 4 metropolitan areas who include Black men in their marital pool are married to the tune of 80-something% by 35. So that's one thing too. We tend to get married a little bit older than other groups of women. But when they pointed that out, they were like, okay, that's one. Why are you using girls as young as 15 in your age group? Number two, many women, I can't say the average women because I'm not sure, but many women tend to marry men who are a little bit older than us. So by the time a woman is 64, she's either widowed or divorced, more likely than not. But the information that he put out in his news special did not weed out the numbers for women who were divorced or women who were widowed. So they could have used a 64-year-old woman and said, oh, she was part of that not married number. But maybe she was widowed. They could have taken a 64-year-old woman and maybe she had been married once and she remarried and was a widow from her second marriage. Do you see what I'm saying? So most of the time, if you've ever looked at actual scholarly research that talks about this shit, they will have, usually there's a section, if they have a data table, there will be a section where they tell you certain things that they included or excluded from the study. So they may tell you, okay, they looked at women from, say, a more reasonable study would probably look at women aged 27 to maybe 60 something, right? Because again, the average woman gets married at 27. So why are we including 15 and 16-year-old girls who are not even of legal age to marry? But I digress. So they would say, okay, we used women in this age group. And then there's a separate category for women who've been married but are widowed. So we pulled all of those women out. Then there's a separate category for women who have been married but they're divorced. So when you look at this final number includes women only who have never been married. And when they did that, they said that the average Black woman, just like any other woman, will marry at some point in our lifetime. I think the average Black woman, more than average, the number goes closer to 90+%, will marry sometime between 50 and 55. So we just marry later. So when you look at the actual numbers, only about 5 to 10% of Black women never marry. But that's not, that's not the sensationalized thing, is it? And see what happens with older Black women and older women in general. Older women who marry for the first time at like 40 plus tend to marry a man that's already in their social circle. And that's also true for women who have gone through a divorce. Even you can look at Black women public figures. Like, for example, Beyonce's mom, her second husband is a man that was already in her social circle, a man that she had known for over 30 years. My friend's grandma got married. I think she was like 61 or 62. She had never been married. She had one daughter, and then her daughter had two girls. One of the girls was one of my best friends, and she never got married. Well, then one day she just pops up and tells everyone that she's married. She married this guy that she had dated much younger. And it'll sound kind of raggedy, but he knew he was dealing with terminal cancer. So he was going to retire on disability. He had a job with the federal government. He had never been married, and he had a paid for house. So he told her that he would leave his pension and his house to her if she married him, and kept his kids from putting him in a nursing home. So that's what she did. And he died like 3 or 4 years later. So she has a federal government pension, full health care benefits, and a paid for house. And a lot of older women do that. My great aunt did that. She had been married for like 45 or 46 years, and her husband died. So she remarried this guy that was already in her social circle. She stayed married to him for 2 years, and he had 2 houses, and he left them both to her. Okay, a lot of women who marry older do that. They just marry some guy in their social circle. Matter of fact, I know another lady who was the dean of students at the college I graduated from. So she was like a career woman, you know what I'm saying? But once she retired, she married this guy who was also a retiree that she had known for a while. And they seem happy. They travel a lot, all that stuff. I mean, women, so if you keep fuck niggas out of your social circle, then if you want to be young and have your career and your education, there's going to be some guy in your social circle that has been looking at you for like 20 or 30 years. And one day when you're like 45 or 50, he's going to take you out to dinner and profess his undying love to you. And he'll marry you. Like, talk to the older women in your family who never married until they were like 50 plus. It was some guy in their social circle, some guy, a lot of older women are in social clubs and other social organizations. And there are men at those events. And many of those men are widowed or divorced. And that's how a lot of women marry in their later years. But that type of information is not going to get you 1 million subscribers. It's not going to get you on Entertainment Tonight. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to get you a lot of publicity, and it's not going to get you a spotlight. And the problem is, Black women don't realize that we hold the power to end those conversations by simply being informed. Once you know the truth, it's easy to tune that shit out. Tune it out. Don't talk about it on social media to the point where it goes viral. Don't give any of those guys your money or your attention, and just present the information. It's like, oh, you're saying X% of Black women will never marry? Well, how come the Pew Research Center says this? How come the FBI says this? How come Kaiser Permanente says this? And why should I believe you? Why should I believe you simply because you're a naker with a microphone versus people who are actually trained in these fields? Why should I believe you versus these people who have master's degrees and PhDs in statistics, who analyze this data for a living and have been doing so for 20, 30 plus years? Why are you more of an expert than these people? Why is anecdotal evidence from someone on the internet more reliable to Black women than the actual facts? All these guys that get on here and talk about their old girlfriends, none of those old girlfriends are married. None of them are otherwise successfully partnered. The only women they can attract are women who've never been married and women who are not desirable otherwise. So if they keep attracting the same type of women, what does that say about them? And how do you know that they're telling the truth? And if you look at the ages of some of these guys are in their early to mid 30s, right? So generally speaking, that would be the age group of their ex-girlfriends. And what did we just say? Black women marry later than other groups of women unless we date out. But ask them about those old girlfriends when they're 40 or 35. Statistically speaking, damn near 90% of them will be married. Let me go back up to make sure I don't miss anything before I log off of here. Yes, that's true. If they get married, how long will it last? It depends on who they marry. Black women in interracial marriages are actually more successful in marriages in terms of the longevity of marriage than most other groups of women except for Asians. But that divorce rate does not follow Black women who marry out. Let's see. Yep. They bring the value down of anyone and anything they come into contact with. Hey, Metadol. Yep, get into good social circles. See, you married in your late 30s, and that's the norm for Black women. We just tend to marry a little bit older, which is why, see, that's the other thing that they pointed out about the data that Steve Harvey put out. Most of the time, when you look at that type of research from the people who are actually trained in it, they will break it down by age. So instead of saying 15 to 64, right, they might go 18 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, so on and so forth. Generally speaking, you won't see such a wide data set used. You said men are usually born at the wall. Yeah, and have to climb over it or get around it. Hi, Nancy. Just remind Black men that their wallets hit the wall and blasted a hole through it. That's why there's a deficit. That's very true. Yep. If you take care of yourself, men will look and talk to you. Well, the West is kind of different. But from what they were saying online, most of the time when they go to those types of events, the expectation is not, the women who go to those events are not solely looking for any one particular group of men. That's why when the men did show up, it was more than one group of men there. Yep, the wall only exists when we stop taking care of ourselves. Right, you hit the wall at 25 according to the manosphere, but the average woman doesn't marry until 27 at the youngest. It's amazing. Like, I know that people who actually take them seriously don't research. And when I say research, like, now you have, like, the Pew Research Center, they have that information online. Kaiser Permanente, they have that information online. So you don't even have to go to the library to read a book to realize that those guys are full of shit. Yeah, he assumed that Black women don't like Asian men. You tend to find them attractive. Yeah, I mean, attraction is not racially based. Okay, if a man is good looking, he's good looking. But what he's talking about the Black women in his age group, and probably the Black women in whatever part of the country he's from, I forget. But it is, and it's just crazy to me that even a Black man who's married felt it important to suggest that Black women are undesirable and don't get married. And it's like, well, sir, all three of your wives would have been Black women. So, but see, that's another conversation for another day. I'll do that one a different time. You said in city parts, it seems like Black women date out more. That OK Cupid study is biting the Black manosphere in the ass. Oh, the manosphere in the ass too. Black women are more open to non-Black men now and vice versa. Yeah, and I mean, and see, that's another thing. Like when they talked about, see, that's one of those studies that's self-reported. So people who do statistical analysis would not take a self-reported study seriously. What they pay attention to is something that they can quantify through data, which is why people like to look at the marital rates that come out from places like the CDC and the FBI and stuff, because they can look at what's taking place with Black women in our marital patterns simply by tracking things like marriage certificates, right? Because on marriage certificates, it shows the race of both the bride and the groom. And also, with something like a OK Cupid study, a lot of times you don't know how many people responded, and you don't know what part of the country they're from. Like if there's a white guy from South Dakota, right, where there's probably less than 2% Black people there in general. That's the guy who probably is never going to run into a Black woman in his dating pool to begin with, because there aren't very many Black women in a place like South Dakota. But again, if you were talking about a study that was done by people who do these things for a living, there would be a table on the study to tell you, well, hey, this is the age group of the men who responded. This is the part of the country they live in, right? This is their income, because they are showing that for some people, their willingness to date out is based on their income. Oh, and their education, right? So this is why, generally speaking, when you see Black women in certain parts of the country who marry out, generally speaking, the men that they marry tend to be a bit more educated and they make a bit more money. Okay? Because in general, I'm not saying all the time, but now in general, we'll just say that marriage is becoming very class-based. And when I say class, I'm talking about socioeconomic. All right. I know how easily offended people are by that kind of thing, and I frankly don't feel like entertaining that right now. Let's see. Yeah, they made it seem that way, but from what some of those people on social media were saying, they were like, well, no, when they have those events, because first of all, I didn't know at first that it was in Texas. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know. I just assumed it was in Atlanta or the DC metro. But they put out, well, no, this is in Texas. And when we have these events, it's not like just because it's a Black woman who hosted the event, it doesn't mean that the target audience is only for Black people. As a matter of fact, in some of the later clips they showed, some of the women who showed up were women of other races as well. So it was really just a thing where it's like, okay, if you're single and you want to come out and mingle, here you go. But it's just that the women in the clip were women who came together as a group and they got there early. And because they got there early, all right, if you want to go somewhere early for a drink and meet men, just go to the nicest bar in your city at happy hour. Go at like 4 o'clock. Go from 4 to 6 when the guys are getting off work and they're coming to have a drink. Let me see. Yep. So, yeah, we tend to be late bloomers because we are focused on how to survive. That's some of it. That is some of it. Some of it too, you know, some of it is because Black women in, Generation X and older millennials were having children younger. You know what I'm saying? Like teens, early 20s. And so they're finishing up school, raising kids. By the time the kids are at a certain age and they've gotten themselves established to a certain point, then, they tend not to have a problem dating. I'll tell you, one of my best friends, I've known her probably for a little over 20 years now. She had her 2 kids with a bum ass nigga who is out of the picture, thankfully. But she had her 2 kids with him. She got back on her feet. And now, we're turning 41 this year. And her boyfriend is very successful. He's a very, very smart guy. And they will probably be getting married in the next year or 2. And so by then she'll be just shy of 45. Because again, when you look at that marital data, it shows we just get married older. And it's for a lot of different reasons. It's like you said, we could be late bloomers because we're focused on how to survive. We're raising kids. And the other thing is that may change with Generation Z. Because Black women, the young Black women in Generation Z are not having children so young, as well as young millennials. Black women who are young millennials are delaying having children. So instead of having to focus on children and be in survival mode all the time, you can do what other young women do, pursue whatever you want to pursue in terms of your education and your career. You can travel, you can build your social circles so that in turn you can meet those really, really great guys that you will then be able to make yourself available to. So that number may change. Generation Z may be the generation that shifts the direction of some of these statistics that we see in terms of Black women. But time will tell. He said, yep, he complained about Black women getting with non-Black men on the West Coast. Black women, shit. Black women out West do not have a problem with interracial dating at all. At all. And if you notice, a lot of the Black women who participate in certain conversations on social media, I'll just say, if you pay attention to where some of those women are from, you will notice that a lot of this stuff is regional. Black women on parts of the East Coast and in parts of the Southeast are not as comfortable dating out. Although I believe that will change with younger millennials and Generation Z as well. I do believe that will change with them. Let's see. I think stuff like that Cupid study is stuff that Black women should ignore. It's like, if you're not showing me something from a reputable organization that can show me a study, right, that shows me the data set. Okay, so you're saying men feel like this. What is their education level? What is their income level? What part of the country are they from? Okay, what's their age group? If you can't show me that, if you can't show me the number of men who participated in that study, I don't think it's reliable. Because how many times have you logged onto a website and you get one of those pop-ups where they ask you to take a survey and you ignore it? So how do we know that this idea that Black women are unwanted is based on a study of like 200 men who live in parts of the country where there are no Black women? Because I will tell you that a non-Black man in DC Metro, New York, California versus, I don't know, Idaho, North Dakota, and Montana, their thinking on this stuff might be different. Like, that's 6 different areas. They may think differently based on their access to Black women. Let me see. That's what it is. They want to groom younger Black women. That's a good word, groom. It's all about grooming. And that's why there's so many people that they're like, divestors. And they've got their pitchforks and all that shit at us. And it's like, okay, but do you not see what's taking place here? When Black women and Black girls are in social circles with certain men, we do not have a problem getting and keeping their attention. I just saw, I think the blog post is old now, but I just saw a vlog from a lady who's been on YouTube for a long time. And her mom is either in her late 60s or early 70s. And her mom just married an older white dude. Well, I guess they're both older. But her mom just married this white dude that's in her social circle. And this is an older lady, nice looking. She's not 25. Hell, neither am I, right? But she was able to meet a man in her social circle. And from all appearances, they're happy. Okay, Black women are desirable until the day we die. Okay, that's just the truth. Yes, a lot of this stuff is regional. Because I'm telling you, if you talk to a Black woman 35 or younger from like Colorado, Texas, Arizona, they would not listen to these dudes because they're like, this isn't what they see. What they see when they go out is that they don't have a problem not only attracting a man, right? Because men are men, they're going to look at you, but they don't have a problem getting asked out. They don't have problems getting in relationships. They don't have problems getting married. Okay, but unfortunately, well, I don't know. Maybe it's a good idea so that they don't mess up other areas, but Black men do not leave their little corner of the world unless they go on these trips where they throw the equivalent of like $2 to some girl to give them a massage on the beach, right? But in terms of traveling the US, they don't move around enough to be able to speak on Black women's ability to date out. Now, yes, if you live in the eastern part of the country, maybe the mid-eastern part of the country, yes. Think about the cities in those regions of the country, right? Then yes, those are the sister soldier type of Black women. But it's a different thing once you go Midwest and further west. You said you wish you were a Black woman in the 80s. It's good to enjoy the time you're in now, you know? Yeah, Gen Z is not going to be easy to groom at all. Yeah, yeah. And a lot of those girls aren't going for it. Yep. When they miss the train for their generation, they try to get revenge by going after those women's daughters and granddaughters. And some of those dudes in those red pilled spaces have actually said that. Okay, they've said, and this is why those of you with kids, you got to watch your daughters. Okay, and really, truth be told, you probably have to watch your sons too. Okay, because those guys are predatory. But you got to watch your daughters because there are men in those red pilled spaces who talk about the fact that they have some ex-girlfriend who might be 45 and maybe she's got a 21, 22-year-old daughter and how they want to date their ex-girlfriend's daughters just to get back at an old girlfriend. But anyway, I just wanted to share my thoughts on that to just give a broader perspective of what took place at that mixer, because some of us have to get out of the Atlanta, DC mindset, right? Where, and honestly, the mindset of the older millennials and Generation X Black women, where every Black woman is going out on some scavenger hunt for a Black man. That's simply not true. Simply not true. Those events are very common in certain parts of the country, like Texas in the West. And at those events, the targeted group of people, whether you're talking about women or men, is not Black. And so that's why, as the night went on, people of all races, including men of all races, showed up to that event. And everyone from their post seemed to end up having a good time. And I wanted to put that out there because I want us to understand that it is so important for these men to beat you down mentally, emotionally, and spiritually that they will take a partial truth or a lie and spread it because they want to make sure that the lie spreads. Because the truth doesn't matter if people don't see it, if people don't hear it. What matters is the messaging that goes the furthest. That's why I used to talk about the memetics of the Black manosphere. Their point is to get their message out, and their message is not based on facts. So before we get on Twitter or TikTok or wherever else and we say, well, no, da 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 da, blah, 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 do the research for yourself. So that if we are contributing to the conversation, we're spreading a message that is based on the truth. The only way to counter a lie is with the truth. Because we don't want some little 18 or 19-year-old Black girl feeling like, oh no, these women went to this event and they're not desirable, so I better just hold on to whatever. Like, no, that's not even what happened. That's not even what happened. And I hope that more of us become more firm in rejecting the Black manosphere, other red pill spaces, and anyone who supports them. Because I will tell you, I cannot take anyone seriously. I cannot take any Black woman seriously who has all this smoke for us, but isn't saying anything about the fact that they made some poor girl and her friends go viral off of a lie, like publicly humiliated them in front of the entire world over a lie. And I don't want any of you to believe any of that shit that those guys say, because it's not true. But it's like I said in November of last year, Black men thrive on putting us through these public humiliation rituals. At the time, I was talking about that with the whole situation with Danny Lee and Mimi and the baby, and how he made it a point to publicly humiliate both women, and how Black men joined in with him both times. No one pointed out the fact that he lied to both of them girls, and he did Mimi dirty. She did herself dirty by continuing to deal with him. Nobody pointed it out. But in Mimi's case, it was about embarrassing a Black woman. And in Danny Lee's case, it's about embarrassing an exotical woman who had somehow wronged a Black man. And in this girl's case, she didn't even do anything other than make a social media post that went viral. And none of the men having these conversations care about what it does to attach some poor girl's face to their very vitriolic, evil, and demonic messages. They didn't care about the fact that, well, it's clear that at points during the night, people of other races came. There were men of other races there, and other clips showed them interacting with all of the women there. Like, nobody cares about that. Because everything is, okay, we have this clip, and we're going to use this moment to embarrass this Black woman, and we'll use her as a weapon against other Black women, even when what they're saying is not true. You see all these motherfuckers online like, well, ha, 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 I would never go to a mixer. And it's like, sweetheart, you know that if a woman is going to a mixer, she's not looking for your dumb ass. She's not looking for your raggedy ass who you probably sitting on your grandma's couch playing video games all night. Like, she's not looking for you. Nobody cares that you're not the ones there. But it's interesting how quiet they got, on Twitter at least, once they saw that other men showed up. Anyway, a few more comments in here. Hey, K Journey. Glad you caught me. Let's see. Hey, Naomi. Yup. They don't leave their corner of the world. That's one thing my mom told me growing up. She said the thing about this area is that this is one little corner of the world. And she said most Black people never leave their one little corner of the world. Well, Black people in the US. That would be the correction I made. Black women outside of the US are very well traveled. That's the problem. See, that was one of my issues with so many Black women taking Kevin Samuels seriously. I'm like, he's from somewhere else and he moved to Atlanta. So he's telling you the dating situation in his one little corner of the world and applying it to all Black women. And it's like, okay, look at your city. And again, no disrespect to y'all, but I'm not talking about you if you're in Atlanta, if you're in the DC metro. I'm not talking about y'all. But if you're from outside of those places, think about how old the Black women are that you know when they get married. Are they getting married at 22 or 23? If they're not, if they're younger than baby boomers. But think about the Black women that you know that are like 40, 45. They've never been married. They're not still married. Don't let these people on the internet take their little bubble and suggest that that's what's happening in the whole country. That's not what's happening. It's just not. The Black women that I know that are a certain age that never ever got married is because they didn't want to. One of my friends' moms is like 56 or 57. She never got married, but she had a couple men that proposed to her, but she just never got married. She got done dirty by my friend's father and she just wrote off marriage. But see, that's something that is included in these scholarly research studies as well, particularly if it's like a self-questionnaire. They'll ask people, okay, so you've never been married. Have you been engaged? Do you want to get married? Because amongst a certain age group of people in the country, regardless of race, you have a growing number of people who just don't want to get married, or they don't want to get married until a certain point in their lives. Okay? Hi, kitty cats. Yep. Hey, Coco Moon. Hi, Ty. Exactly. I don't think that Black women should just be open to interracial dating. I think if you are a Black woman and you are single, you are widowed, or you are divorced, I think that you should consider exclusively interracially dating. I do not think you should include Black men in your dating pool. Because I'm telling you, when you look at these moments, when these Black women go viral for just an innocent social media post, it's like, nah, some nigga on her friends list shared that shit, shared it in a group or somewhere and made it go viral. But if you choose to include them in your dating pool, knock yourself out. I can't tell you what to do. Oh, here you go. You say, you got Black men saying they are coming for the biracial daughters of Black women. But those biracial daughters of Black women have non-Black fathers. They would be more protected. But do you see how disgusting they are? Like, imagine if white men said, that they were coming for the biracial daughters that white women had with black men. Do you know how much of an outcry that would be? Because they're basically looking at underage girls and basically doing the Birdman hand rub and saying, well, yeah, once she turns 18, they're going to pounce on her. But no, like, those girls will make their own decisions, but you're right. They're going to be, see, black men very much understand this about their biracial children and their children in general. As children grow up, their interest is going to be based on who they're around. So you notice a lot of times it goes viral, right? When some black guy has a black son and his son takes a white girl out, right? Like in the situation with LeBron's son. Everybody was like, well, he took a white girl to the prom. Well, of course. Because even though LeBron, he might give money to certain underprivileged areas, he's sending his kids to schools and other programs with white kids. So his son is not going to be around little black girls. Same thing with Kanye and his kids. When he has them, they're not going to schools and stuff around black kids. Now that's speaking of him, that's why he's so upset about Pete Davidson and his girls in particular being around him. Because those girls are pretty young. I mean, I think North is under 10. And I don't know, the other girl is really young. So depending on how long Kim keeps Pete around, or any other man she deals with, if she decides to go back to white men, her girls are going to be primarily raised by white men. So who do you think they're going to grow up and date? So that's why they're concerned about black women who have biracial daughters. Because those girls are probably going to be most likely to be around little white boys, little Asian boys, Hispanic boys, whatever. They're not going to go to school with little black boys. So those girls will probably grow up, and it's going to be natural for them, right, to go on dates and other events with the boys that they're around who are going to be non-black. So it's like, okay, Naker, how are you going to get around these little biracial black daughters of black women? How are you going to be around them? Your kids are not going to be going to school with their daughters. But again, they know that. That's why it wasn't surprising to me when LeBron's son took that little white girl to the prom. I was like, well, of course. For publicity purposes, LeBron is going to do things, for black communities. But did y'all think he was going to send like these black guys who they get all this publicity for creating private schools for black kids and black communities? Do you think they're going to send their kids to school with your little nakers? You think he's going to send his son to school with your daughters? Of course not. His son is going to go to the private school in the wealthy gated community. They pretty much set their sons up to not be around black girls, which is a godsend, really, because all they would do if they were around your daughters is make them single mothers and give them STDs. So it's really a blessing in disguise. But no, they won't have access to the biracial daughters of Black women. I'm just pointing out that it's disgusting that they're thinking about little girls who are not even grown women yet, and already saying that they're coming for your daughters. They're coming for your biracial daughters. We'll see how their fathers feel about that. Oh, okay. Okay, I don't know much about Oklahoma. Yeah. Which, like I said, I think that's a good thing. I think more of them should encourage their sons to date out. Because again, your biracial daughters will be in schools with boys of other races. So you won't have to worry about them being around your girls. Anyway, I hope you enjoy your Monday. I am going to wrap it up, but we'll talk soon. Have a good week. And again, when you see those viral moments, if you feel like it, just do a little bit of your own digging on social media to get the real story. Because I'm telling you, these guys will lie. They will lie just to sit around and laugh at Black women. Okay? And also, again, if you're talking about guys who are from places where it's already known that there are low marital rates for Black people in general, they don't have a broad enough view of the world to speak on Black women. Nothing against you if you're from Atlanta or you live in Atlanta, but I'm just telling you, everywhere in the country is not like Atlanta. Everywhere in the country is not like the DC metro, and you don't have to take my word for it. Some of those studies, they'll actually show you the difference in the marital rates with Atlanta and DC and one or two cities versus the marital rates if you just took those cities out. Okay, because what we're dealing with, again, is we have 3 or 4 major metropolitan areas in the country where the marital rates for Black women are low. And because we're such a small portion of the population, it skews the data for the entire country. And in a real statistical study, when you're dealing with a situation where you have a small data set, and this case would be us, so a small group of the population to analyze, and you have 3 or 4 components that skews the data, the study would not be viewed as something that could be considered for scholarly research. Because it's like, okay, we either have to take the data and remove those 3 or 4 components, or we have to scratch the study altogether. All right? Have a good one. We'll talk soon.